Solo mining is the embodiment of the original dream, a defiant act of individual sovereignty where one person, one node, and one miner take a stand against centralized control. We don't just mine for profit, we mine for principle. We mine for ourselves and for each other and for the unyielding spirit at Bitcoin's core. Join us as we dig in and hold the line. This is the Home Mining Podcast. Hello, Bitcoin home miners. 2Sats here, and I want to give a quick thank you to our sponsors before we jump into another amazing episode here on the Home Mining Podcast. First up, if you want to stack sats the right way in the US or Canada, you've got to check out today's sponsor, Bitcoin Well. It's a fully non-custodial platform. It's straight to your own wallet using on-chain or Lightning. They never custody your funds. That's the way it should be. So use our link to join Bitcoin Well. You'll also earn bonus points with every Bitcoin buy you make when you sign up using our link. And those points are actually redeemable for coin tosses into their Bitcoin wishing well, which gets you free sats. You can even win up to 1 million sats in the wishing well, which is amazing. Or you can save up your points and use them for a Bidax Gamma from Solo Satoshi. So just go ahead and scan the QR code on the screen or hit the link in the description and join me on Bitcoin Well to start stacking sats today. Now, during this episode, have your Lightning wallets ready because we'll also be giving away some free sats, courtesy of Bitcoin Well. And if you're ready to go ahead and start your Bitcoin home mining journey with us, go ahead and grab a Bidax Gamma or a NerdQX++ from the Solo Satoshi store using our link or by scanning the QR code you see on the screen now. Listeners of the Home Mining Podcast that use this link have access to an exclusive discount code. All you got to do is go to the store using our link, put whatever you want in your cart, and when you go to checkout, use code 2SATS, the number 2, SATS, and you can snag yourself a nice little discount on your purchase. We really appreciate you supporting the podcast. I know you're going to enjoy this episode, and let's dig in to this next episode. Hello and welcome back to the Home Mining Podcast by Solo Satoshi. I'm your host, 2Sats, and today I'm joined once again by the amazing, innovative builder in the heat punk space, Mr. Toine.
Hey, how's it going?
Great, man. Glad to have you on. So Toine reached out because he enjoyed our last episode, which I know all of you guys did as well, and that he was on. And we sort of towards the end of that conversation went in a bit of a different direction, a little less technical, a little bit more heady, philosophical. And he was doing some thinking in between then and now. And he's got something that he wants to share with our audience first. So you guys are going to get some exclusive access to what's going on inside the brain pan of Mr. Toine.
Hey, yeah, thanks for that. I really appreciate you having me back on. It's awesome speaking with you. And definitely the last time we spoke, it was like, there's something deeper here. There's more to, I think I'm very guilty of getting lost in the technical minutia or like trying to communicate the benefits of something through like a extremely technical lens. And, every once in a while stuff happens where you have to take a step back and be like, philosophically, why am I doing this? What's the impetus here? What's the incentive? What's the main reason for this? And then diving into all the second and third order consequences and the inspirations behind that, I think is important to go through as a heat punk because, the heat punk really is kind of like a lifestyle. It's a cypherpunk as it gets in terms of, the ethos. It's technical. There's hardware. It hits all the talking points of the cypherpunk movement. So, like, what's the point? Why do we do this? And upon reflecting, on this question, I was always, I was reminded of Jeff Booth, especially his talks in like the early 2020s where he would speak of the the fiat system and the Bitcoin system and how, progress and innovation is deflationary and how the inflationary or debt-based system is incompatible. And that really resonated with me. But, I wasn't a heat punk back in 2020. I started in 2022, 2023, 2021, 2022, really. But looking at his kind of his lectures back then, and seeing it through the heat punk lens, it really brings up these like strong notions of, or these like visuals of like these two systems, and you're kind of like on two surfboards, and you're kind of taking weight off of one and placing it on the other. And the more weight you place on the Bitcoin boat or surfboard, the easier life gets. And you know, this is what I wanted to talk about today, and how the heat pump kind of movement is really it dovetails well into circular economies and offloading from the fiat system, and making life easier, in terms of not having to run so much on the treadmill, the treadmill of life. If you're if you're looking at value through a fiat lens, you're always having to work harder every year because you're being stolen from. And, obviously wages don't keep up with the rate of theft. And I just see, passively receiving income through a hash rate heater as a great way to, again, shift a little bit more weight onto the Bitcoin surfboard, and offload some stress, and decrease your RPMs on the hamster wheel on the fiat side. And yeah, wanted to dive into that more, to a whole bunch of going from the history, going all the way from like the origins of the I mean, it's really counterfeiting, right? All the way from the money changers and all the way down to currently how that's being perpetrated, and touching on things like what WTF happened in 1971, and seeing like the second and third order psychological, sociological effects of debasement on society. And again, how hash rate heating is like, it's like it's not a cure all solution, but it's like it's a way to, like Jeff Booth says, to offload from the fiat system, and kind of stop reinforcing that system by participating in it. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the big takeaway that I got from a lot of his work too, was if you are not doing something in the Bitcoin space and then moving all in on that, you're effectively strengthening the system that you say you hate and that you don't want to be as much of a part of. So just participating for number go up technology, I get it, because everybody is still thinking short term from the outside until Bitcoin kind of changes them from the inside in terms of time preference. But yeah, like it really is important to start thinking about, how did I get enslaved into the fiat system? Like, how did I and my ancestors and all these generations fall into this, and what is the possible escape hatch? There's one of the big speakers that calls it an escape valve or an escape hatch.
Yeah.
Don't know if it's Mallers or it's somebody, but they call it an escape hatch, or an escape valve, and it's so true. And it's pretty much the only thing that I can see or think of that is going to provide that amount of leverage, where one day you might be able to have some sort of a system outside of the system that you can slowly sort of step away, walk away from that treadmill, the hedonic treadmill, the treadmill of labor, and expending all your time and energy, which is so precious and so limited on Earth, giving it away to this sort of invisible control structure, which I have a feeling we're gonna touch on what this invisible control structure is and how it's stopping us from living a life that's sort of more in alignment with what Bitcoin would provide us.
Yeah, for sure. Just in terms of the structure of the system, it's it's a debt-based system that we live in. So money is lent into existence, which means you're creating a game of musical chairs where there's always more participants and less chairs. And that's why we have I think it's like a 4-year credit cycle. That's why we have these booms and busts. That's why we have increasing inequality amongst different income earners. It's really like, this is you solve this problem, and everything trickles down and reinforces a better system, a better way to do it, a healthier system. And so yeah, that's the problem. And I guess to go back into history, when I started having kids in 2015, I thought, okay, this is something I kind of have to pay attention to solve, because it's really hard to have a child and and then have to go to work when you want to see your kid. You have to work late. You don't get to see, first steps or something like that. That feels like a trait that I just wasn't willing to make anymore. So it put me down this like rabbit hole of Austrian economics, hard money. I became a gold bug for a period there in the early 15, 16, 17, whatever, late teens. Um, and then I found Bitcoin. I think I first learned about it like 2013. I got interested in 2015 around the same time I got into gold, but I never acted on it. I just thought, oh, this cool magic internet money, probably like most of us did at the time. I mean, some of us were already knee deep in it. But yeah, it was back then, it was one of these things where it was like a 1 in a million chance of it going anywhere. And, and then just every touch after that, it's like, oh, it's 10x. Oh, it's 10x. Oh, maybe I should start paying attention a little bit more to this. And then, being in Canada, we actually had ETFs before the US market, like 3 or 4 years before the US market did. So we actually had the ability to invest not in on like actual Bitcoin, but to do it kind of through a proxy, and you could do it through registered accounts, which was great because I just set up my kid's RESP account, and I was like, okay, well, long term, I understand it, I believe in it, and, so you buy some for their RESP, and as soon as you have a little skin in the game, most people will tell you it's like you pay attention more and you start to want to learn more. It sends you down the rabbit hole, and what's that phrase? Everyone shows up to get rich, but they stay for the revolution. I found that to be pretty true. So, fast forward, I want to get involved. And, I'm very kinesthetically motivated. Like I did my degree in industrial design. When I was young, I got a car that was just always needing repair. So I was taking it apart. This is before the internet. So I was using like the Haynes manuals, the written, big, thick phone book style car repair manuals, and, very like kind of autodidactic. I was obsessed with learning about how to it was usually focused on like fixing, building, um, inventing, and my degree really kind of assisted with that. And then from there, going into architecture and 3D rendering was kind of natural, and that's what kind of exposed me to the computer side, where I got to build my own computers, understand about, I wasn't hashing, but I was doing 3D renderings, which was also compute. It's all the same compute, just done with, actually we were doing CPU, but there was also lots of GPU compute going on, which at the time was tied in with mining. People who bought these expensive GPUs in our studio when they weren't using it to render 3D animations and stills, they were hashing on them and earning Bitcoin, which was kind of cool. I thought, wow, what a great thing for a studio to adopt, because when it's not busy, you have $1 million of hardware sitting there idle. Why don't you hash some Bitcoin? And in 2018, I tried to convince the owner of the company that I worked for to do that. He was not receptive. And I think a year later, I showed him you could have had an additional $1 million in revenue if you just ran this $1 million render farm on SHA 256. I think through NiceHash, you could have done it with like any hardware. And at the time, it was paying like crazy in 2018. Like you could mine on a laptop if it was like a gaming laptop. So
sucks to suck.
Yeah, it sucks to suck. That is the perfect statement for what happened there. Yeah.
Yeah.
The long story short, they went out of business. I guess, it was one of the things that contributed, like not taking advantage or not knowing, like if you're sitting on $1 million worth of hardware, having it being, idle is painful for someone like me. Like I feel like that's painful. And I wasn't even the owner of that company. I just worked for them. So it was, yeah, life is filled with missed opportunities. I mean, every Bitcoiner will be like, oh, I can't believe I sold 60 Bitcoin in 2018 to buy a blah, 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 whatever. Right. And, it's always going to feel like that, I think, forever. But at the same time, if you can offload from that fiat surfboard and on loan to you never feel like you don't have enough Bitcoin. Because if your standard is Bitcoin, if you're denominating your costs in Bitcoin, if you're denominating your income in Bitcoin, you don't have that same, like, I think Jack Mahler's called it the hodler's dilemma at his conference. I was really disappointed by that talk. I thought he was going to talk about lightning and not lending. I thought he was going to talk about, you can use it as money, And then you don't have this dilemma because you don't have to perceive it through this narrow window of a store of value, this digital gold or whatever, you know. But instead, he pitched a lending product, and I was like, the Lightning guy's pitching lending now, and TCs and all this crap. And I was like, okay, kill your enemies or whatever, kill your heroes or whatever the saying is. Like, you know, like ideologies don't have to align, but when you see someone who you admire so much say something that you so fervently disagree with, it's like, okay, it's like regroup here and try to understand why I have such a visceral reaction to like pitching lending products this late in the cycle. Do you know what I'm getting at? Like,
it's inherently a fiat trap anyways. It's completely antithetical to Bitcoin. And I imagine as a builder yourself, you're probably looking at that and going, and I bet a lot of devs and Lightning devs and all these people are looking at this and going, do you really care about Bitcoin? I mean, you could be funding the expansion, the evolution of Bitcoin, right? They could be funding home mining. They could be funding protocol development, like these different pools for the plebs, like a hash pool, right? VNPRC, like all these great stuff that needs to be built, but it's really hard to get funding for. You've got to apply for all these, open sats grants and hope the HRF picks up on your stuff and funds you. But I imagine there's so many people that have ideas that would actually make a difference. And you're out here towards the end of a bull cycle pitching a lending product. Yeah. I can understand why you'd have a tough reaction. It would really be nice to see these people, and maybe they do it behind the scenes and we just never hear about it, but it would be nice to see some of these people do something to actually push Bitcoin forward and not just like kind of mush it all together in some fiat slop.
It feels like fiat slop. As soon as I heard like that talk, I was like, I hadn't thought about Jeff Booth in like probably years, and I was like, oh, we're reinforcing the fiat system because I think there was even talk of like paying off debt with other loans. Like it was just very Luna Terra-esque, and
Yes.
and I'm back to like the hodler's dilemma. It's like you're never short Bitcoin, or you're never like feeling like you don't have enough Bitcoin if you denominate your life in it. And then if you do that, there's second and third order benefits with regards to taxation in certain jurisdictions, because if you're buying things with Bitcoin on the internet, you're essentially escaping the constraints or the inflationary and taxation restraints of the local fiat system. But more importantly, I think there's a psychological component there. I mean, taking on debt always had negative psychological implications, I think, for society, and even just anecdotally for myself. The crushing weight of debt, whether it's a new first home mortgage or something like that, where the LTV is high. It's nothing gets you running on that hamster wheel like having that over your head. And I would try to inspire young people to take it easy. Don't load up on student debt. Don't load up on housing debt. Like, look at your options. Whatever you think you can budget, cut it in half, because you're looking at a static budget. You're not looking at your personal inflation basket and what the implications of a 20% cost increase every year is. If you're a young family, that's realistic. If you're looking at, childcare expenses, education costs, gas, mortgages, housing, rent, these things are your biggest budgetary items in a familial household. And those things are going up at 20%.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, steaks are up like 40% in 3 years, like something crazy. So, yeah, it's a really sobering reality when you're doing like your family budget to I think it's inaccurate. A lot of financial planners will use this fiat framework and carry it forward to the future, when the reality is they're not taking into account debasement. And if they are, they're doing it on CPI terms and not your personal inflationary basket. So there will always be a shortfall, which means you're always going to be taking on more debt, which means you're always basically a servant of your bank. Essentially, you are.
So I wanted to just jump in because we could keep going on that, and we will. Let's riff on that a bit because there was a lot of good stuff in there.
Sure.
One being that, you know, the system that they are operating in is inherently broken and flawed to begin with. So the solutions that those people provide, your planners and your financial advisors, it's never going to be what you would have if you were just buying Bitcoin or just being denominating your life in Bitcoin, right? I remember going to the bank and they were asking me why I had so much money in my savings account or my checking account. And I was like, well, that's awfully nosy. How, you know, they probably shouldn't know that and bring that up, but they do. They're looking at that, right? They're monitoring that. And they said, why don't you want to put that money to work? Why don't you want to invest, you know, in these index funds, for example? And I said, well, okay, give me a meeting with your financial advisor and, you know, hook me up with one of those and let's go over it. And then I went in there and she must have been looking at me like, what does this 20-year-old punk want, right? You know, at the time. And I was like, well, I read the small print, so I know, you know, what your fees are. And so after management fees, after the share that they're taking, plus inflation, plus the average performance, you know, of the actual index or whatever they're getting you to invest in, you're losing money investing with the bank,
That's right.
with a financial advisor there. You know, they're so far off, right? So if they're off and those are the people who are supposed to be teaching people about money, it's no wonder that people are, when they hear just get into debt, because everybody's in debt, you've got to have a credit card, you've got to live above your means, one day you'll pay it off, get that new car at 18, get a house, just get into a house. You know, it's like when they hear all these things and all they're hearing is, well, that's how my parents lived and how their parents lived, and so they don't know any better. They go into this trap and they're crushed, right? Like, look at the amount of evictions and foreclosures that happen in the States, for example. I'm sure, you know, it's in Canada as well. So if the education about money is bad and the system that they're teaching that all on is flawed, it's no wonder why we've just kind of ran at full speed down this path and into a brick wall in every person's sort of day to day. That's what they're accustomed to.
Yeah. Yeah, and it contributes to an ever increase in low trust societies. Like it's like if you there's many people who have positions where they have fiduciary responsibilities, where it's an accountant, a lawyer, you know, your personal financial advisor. They're supposed to have fiduciary responsibilities to you, but because the base of the pyramid is crumbling, they can't. They if they have to operate within the framework of the fiat system, or you know, i.e., usually their employer, which is the bank, which is, you know, the main reinforcement arm of the fiat system, let's call it. There's no way they could truly have a fiduciary responsibility to your client, because you're starting off on a broken leg. You know, like you can't run if you start off with a broken foot. So, yeah, I see that as a really sobering and scary reality. And like I said, like I referenced the game of musical chairs, it just perpetuates this, oh, we need to put more, oh, there's more people, and, you know, they just keep on, I guess, yeah, building instability. So the more people who can offload from that system, it'll benefit their lives immediately. But I think there's like a knock-on effect where it'll benefit the lives of the people around them. Because if you have savings, you can buy more things, which props up your economy, which allows other people to have more prosperity, and maybe they invest or they offload from the fiat system with that prosperity. And it's like the incentives, I think, allow for this thing to snowball and take over. I really do think Bitcoin can take over.
Aligned incentives, right? Which is exactly what we don't have in the fiat system with the fiat mindset. And that kind of dovetails into the circular economies that we both find so important, right? It's like, if you have harder money, you can buy better quality goods, and that will prop up that business owner. That'll allow for expansion. You're paying them in the hardest money, so their efforts, their energy, they're not being devalued when you give them fiat. They're not being printed into devaluement or debasement. In fact, you're actually giving them the ability to stay in business longer, innovate, create better products, because Bitcoin, if they're selling their goods for Bitcoin, they understand time horizons and time principles, right? So they're going to have a much better time preference, and they're going to be allowed to explore that and expand and build on that, which is a solid foundation, because they're being paid in Bitcoin. So I think that's extremely important. And then, you know, you bring that back around to well, why are we building the home heating space with miners, right? Because household costs, right? Like you said, household costs are already huge. And then you have your electricity, your heating, all of these things, right? And if you can turn one of those into an asset instead of a liability, and you get paid in the hardest money mankind has ever known to do so, now you're starting to really rattle the cage here. You're starting to really crumble the old foundation and replace it with a better one that 50 to 100 years from now is going to be incredible for how it could shape society, and more importantly, probably just like the individual lives of families or small communities.
Yeah, yeah. The last thing you said, small communities, I think that's who stands to benefit the most, because higher trust societies, usually in small communities, like-minded societies, and people who care for their neighbors. So um, you're less likely to dismiss your neighbor's hash rate here if you are like-minded and care about them and have relationships with the people in your community. And then once something like that catches on, which I don't see it not, I mean, the incentives are too strong for, if one of these, and I've seen it, like I've seen it with my clients, person A buys a miner, neighbor B comes over, now neighbor B wants one day. And then what happens is, once you have a foothold of these hash rate heating communities, that allows you to, again, as a community, offload from one boat or one surfboard onto the Bitcoin surfboard. And then that's like step two. Once you get to step two, huge benefits. The second and third order consequences of that are massive, just with regards to the sociological implications. I think at that point you start to see societies changing, and incentives being redrawn into much healthier. What I would say is, you're probably looking at the WTF happened in 1972, but in reverse. All these things start to unwind. All the incarceration rates and the teenage pregnancies. I think that's when you start to see that chart rewind and go back to pre 1971 levels. I think that's a mechanism to do so. And again, hash rate heating isn't the be all say all, but I think the education process behind it is powerful, and it allows you to what you learn when you hash rate heat, it allows you to leverage it with other areas of Bitcoin, becoming a lightning maxi, and understanding all the things that are available to you if you run a lightning node, and routing, and the risk-free rate of return as a routing node. I mean, the rabbit hole once you have the physical hardware of a hash rate heater, the rabbit hole gets so much deeper, because you have the ability to use it in ways that are so above and beyond your typical user. And I think that optionality is powerful.
A better world is being built silently below the surface. From when we talk about this stuff, that's what I picture. There's sort of like an image in my mind of like, we are building that to replace this system. Because if you look at gold, historically, when gold does what it just did, it's usually the end of an era and ushers in some sort of catastrophe, and then it's followed up by like an emergence of a new era. And so we are kind of overdue for the US dollar to not be the reserve currency anymore. And sort of, you can see the way people have gone from conservative to super liberal back. Now it's swinging that pendulum back to conservative, and people are more, valuing those kind of values. And so I think under the surface, this Bitcoin world is emerging, and it's being built so that a better family life, a better communal life, which is so important, which we've lost touch with in the last 10, 20, 30 years. That's going to reemerge for sure. And it's going to be rooted in the things that we're talking about here today with Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so cool to see. Like you said, it's a really just like an underground thing right now. As evidenced by like the extremely small and tight knit community of hash rate heat punks, such as yourself and others that we know. But watching it grow is and just seeing how much, even just in my inbox, like the interest coming in from people in so many different circumstances, and different use cases hitting my inbox and being like, I never thought of that. What a great application for hash rate heating. It's so cool to see. And these talks that we have and you have with other guests are, I think, inspiring lots of other like similar technical problem solving type of minded people to jump in. And I always people hate the phrase, you can just do things, right? But that is a crazy truth. Like if you're, and I think people hate it because so many people are, they, the primary drive in their life is like a, like a resentful, they do
Yes.
it out of like a resentful, obligation. Like there's like,
To life.
yeah, they interact with life as like, it's this like, this hard, terrible thing that they just have to get through. And, you know, I have kids or a mortgage and I just have to do, I got to go in every day with my tie and I just have to do it because there's too much on the line. And I think people like that typically don't like hearing you can just do things because, you know, it's scary to just do things. You can just do things. But again, you know, if you have obligations, it can be extremely scary. And I understand the reaction that many pull back from that, but like you really like you have more free will than I think most people think they have, and um, the problem with not being able to just do things is a fiat problem. I think that you
Yes.
know, if you build on savings, I think, and through Bitcoin, through you know deflationary forces like you know Bitcoin, I think then it becomes more and more available to people to like just try things out and not worry about failing because your whole life, you know, like you're not paycheck, if you're paycheck to paycheck and something you try takes a month and it doesn't pan out, you know, you could be, you can't try, you can't just do things, you know, you can't just do things. But I think if the uh, society switches from a debt-based to a savings-based society via a mechanism like Bitcoin, then I think the impetus to just try different things and experiment and utilize your free will in a way that maximizes the benefit to yourself and your family, I think that becomes more available to those who are offloading from that fiat surfboard.
I always like to talk about or reference sort of the Bitcoin changing your default settings,
Yeah,
right?
that's awesome.
And your default settings in the fiat world are like you just described, and you nailed it for me. Like you're speaking my language because that's one I focus a lot on when I'm thinking to myself or talking with people. Is like life is not something that you just grind through. You just got to get through it. I'm just putting in my time, man. This is just the way life is. There's a lot of these common phrases that you hear from these people, but where I don't hear a lot of those phrases is coming from Bitcoiners.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have 10 Bitcoin to your name for your default settings to inherently change for the better. I hear people with, you know, God knows how small amounts of Bitcoin whose thinking, whose default settings has been changed because they hold Bitcoin, right? It's not that if they fail, you know, they're going to be okay. They just look at failure a different way. It's not like Bitcoin's going to necessarily save them because they don't have tons of it, but just learning in Bitcoin, learning with Bitcoin, learning through Bitcoin
Yeah.
has changed the way that they handle failure. They don't resent the world anymore. Like you just don't hear them say the same things that you hear people say that are caught on the fiat treadmill, which, you know, they're there because of that broken system. A lot of these people aren't living intentionally out of their means. It's just, it's set up so that you fail. It really is, right?
The
It's set up that
goalposts are
you're
just
a,
switching every year. Yeah.
yeah, you're set up from birth to be a tax slave and a debt slave to your country. And that's just the way it is. So unless you do something different, then of course you think you can't just do things. And that's sad. It's really sad. So I really love what you said there. And Bitcoin does open up that, not just because of the financial side of things, but the way it shapes your thinking and sort of alters what your default settings are.
Yeah, if you're looking to get rich fast, Bitcoin's not for you. If you're looking to get rich slow, I think that's the game. I think that's and I think that's getting rich fast has negative psychological implications, but I think getting rich slow, it kind of, it allows you to learn hard lessons along the way to a successful end. Like I think that's the magic of it, of I guess the way Bitcoin adoption was planned by Satoshi. It comes back down to like, why was the halving schedule done on a 4-year cycle, coinciding with the presidential election cycle? There's all these really interesting things when you look deeper into it. And I think it's, again, he was a master of incentives. Apparently he wasn't the best coder, but he was the best thinker, and could express or could design a system that had like the strongest incentives. So Yeah.
You said something interesting there, which is the getting rich slow versus getting rich fast. And
Yeah.
just an anecdote is that, people who win the lottery, their life doesn't get better usually. Usually it gets a lot worse. So look into the stories and some of the facts around people who win the lottery. Family members come out of the woods. You haven't heard from them for a long time. Like a lot of these people that win and get rich fast by winning the lottery or some sort of chance event, an inheritance, they're usually broke,
Yeah.
more broke than they were before they won. So just an interesting thing there about time incentives and time alignment. So it's definitely, possible to do this the right way, do it on a properly adjusted time scale. And what you'll learn along the way is much better than if this is just handed to you. I liken all of that to shitcoinery. Yes, you
Yeah.
might be the one person that hits the one 10,000x, but for everybody else, they're down 98%, 99%. And so just a lot of lessons in there. Let's carry on.
Yeah. What's the saying? Like, or maybe it's not a saying, but in my head, it's like you can change your net worth overnight, but you can't change your culture overnight. And I think getting rich slow allows you to change your culture to one that's sustainable and kind of aligned with I guess the ethos of Bitcoin. Some say there is no ethos, but like I think when Satoshi designed what he designed, it clearly had a hard money ethos kind of, built into to Bitcoin. So there's that. I wanted to quickly, something you said spurred my memory. And then, I was always influenced by Gigi, like in 20,
Yes.
and, his concept of the time chain, I don't know if he pioneered that phrase, but I think he did, but, I think that is a really, really like good way to look at Bitcoin. Like, when people ask me like, what is Bitcoin to you? I've updated my answer to it is time. Like, and take that however you want it. Like, it's time for you. It's time for your future. The more heavily involved with Bitcoin I am, the more time I seem to have. And I don't think that's an accident. I don't think that's a side. I think that is a direct benefit of Bitcoin because going back to that hamster wheel, if you denominate your life in fiat, your RPMs are increasing. But I think if you denominate your life in Bitcoin, you can take time to realign and to I guess course correct. And that ability to course correct allows you to take more risks in terms of like your business or to try different things. I mean, um, even like just in my personal life, I wanted to find the best way to control these 120-volt miners. So I bought like every single smart switch you can get, and I tried them all. Like it allows you to do R&D to a thorough level that I don't think I would be able to do on a fiat standard. And it's just because if you have the time to dedicate to it, you can do a better job. And that time I think comes from not being a victim of debasement.
Absolutely. Yeah. If your time and your value is not being debased constantly and you can't keep up with it, I mean, like you said, 20% as a number of like your average household needs going up, basically. I
Yeah.
mean, where are you getting paid 20% a year in your job extra? No, you're just not. Maybe once or twice in your career, you can leave whatever office or fund or company, tech company, whatever company that you work for, and get a better offer from another company. But you're not doing that consistently at a 20% year over year rate of return, right? So
Yeah.
it's, even with one company, back in the day, it used to be you get a job at one company, you stay there for 30, 40 years, you work, you get this great retirement. That was for like one or two generations at the most. It's not a thing that exists now.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a job at the coffee shop or, the car factory and have this great retirement later. So you need something that's going to return you your time and energy. And Bitcoin has proven over its existence to have, let's just be conservative, 50%, 40% CAGR,
Yeah.
right? Compound annual growth rate. Some people say higher to like 65%, depends, what information you're looking at. But let's just be super conservative and sandbag it. Where are you getting 30, 40% compound annual growth rate and increasing the value of all your time and labor and energy, which Jeff Booth talks all the time about.
Yeah.
And so Bitcoin is that answer. And also for anybody that is listening to this, I highly recommend you go and look into Dear Gigi's work. Read this more abstract stuff, really embodies the ethos. Like I agree with you. There is an ethos.
Yeah.
Person to person, it might vary a little bit, the interpretation, but there are some clear things that stand out as the philosophy of Bitcoin, as the ethos of Bitcoin. And Gigi does the best job, in my opinion, of laying that out there. I love his work. I have so many of his articles saved, and I go back and reread them, all of his essays, very often, like a couple times every couple months, just to really get that in your head, because it can be so easy to look at the charts, look at the numbers. If you're a trader, if you're not just a holder, right, you're really in the minutia. But when you really zoom out and look at the 30,000 foot view, you're like, this is a change of world order, of philosophy, of economics, of society, really. And it's easy to lose sight of that. So good shout to Gigi there.
Yeah, I think I have to include a link for you because there's a 20-minute video he has, and I'll see if I can dig it up and send you the link. It's like a motion graphics video, and I love that it's only 20 minutes, and it actually deals with like the physics, the physical reality of the situation, and like a circumference of the Earth, and why it's a 10-minute block, because that's how much time you need for everyone to coordinate on the planet, because you have latency and delay. Like it's so incredibly interesting. I think he was instrumental in like a much deeper understanding of the protocol and the money. And I think you said like where else can you get an asset that compounds at the 45% or 40% CAGR? Two things. One thing I like to do there is I like to do, instead of a compound annual growth rate, I like to amortize that over a 4-year period, because then you can sync it up with the cycles. And
Okay.
I find that it gives you like I guess a more true picture, because you're not uh the CAGR can swing dramatically depending on if you're on year 1 or year 4 of that cycle.
Yes.
So using the 4-year is a great way to do it. And I think that's still around like 45 or 50%. If you look at it on a compound annual growth rate averaged over 4 years. And then what was the other? Compounded growth rate. Oh, it's gone. I think I forgot the second half of that. It had something to do with the compound annual growth rate, but oh yes, you were talking about what other asset keeps up with it. But the cool thing about Bitcoin is it's not an asset; it's money, right? Like if we were trading this on Forex, we wouldn't be paying tax on converting Canadian dollars to Bitcoin and vice versa, because it has, for me, all the properties of a currency. So that's another thing. Every other asset that, let's say, performs like, NVIDIA or something, every other asset that performs that well is like a property, basically an asset, like an ownership over something that has a face value. With Bitcoin, I think one of the things Gigi says is the map is the territory, which means, it's not like it's not like you have to convert Bitcoin into some sort of spendable currency. It is the most spendable currency. And once you realize that, you're like, oh, this is like the safest, but also best performing thing ever, just because I don't have counterparty risk in the form of like with every other asset, you have a holder, like a bank or custodian or um, a mining company with the gold in the ground, and they're the ones who are responsible for managing the excavation of it. You always have a huge third party risk. And with Bitcoin, you're getting that return without any third party risk. And for me, that's, it's worth way more. I think we're going to see that lack of third party risk become front and center in the next 10 years with regards to capital flight measures and limiting bank withdrawals and digital IDs, digital currency measures. We're going to see that quality of Bitcoin as money become so much more important than the last 10 years, where we were just, digital gold was good enough, right? It was a good enough of a story to get people on board. But I think the killer app aspect of Bitcoin will be its immutability in the next 10.
So we just saw a story in the last few weeks. I'm sure you probably saw it with Vietnam and the bank accounts there, and they were saying that they are just going to like start confiscating people's bank accounts.
I think it was most of the bank accounts got confiscated or something.
There's a ton. Like, yeah, the numbers were astronomical.
Like something crazy.
Yeah, I don't have it up in front of me, so I can't give y'all, direct stats, but it was something like that made you have pause, and you're like, "Oh, this isn't just a small group of people who did something wrong in the eyes of their government, and now they're seizing their bank accounts. This is like widespread." So very concerning there, very concerning there, and you can see, like what Toine was saying, how the killer app is cross-border instant settlement, free of third-party counterparty risk, direct value for value, just as the white paper stated, a peer-to-peer electronic digital cash system, right? So the peer-to-peer part is the key to that sentence, and we're seeing real-world examples of why that's the case all the time. And as we enter into this next cycle, right, we're nearing the end of the bull cycle here, October 7th that we're recording this. Traditionally, end of October, sort of the end of the bull market after the 4-year cycle there. So this, lots of speculation. Will this get extended into Q1 of next year, Q2? Maybe, but the point is that the debt keeps climbing, right? The national debt keeps climbing. The money printing is only increasing. They have no other choice but to cut rates. So when you're playing that losing game, you realize that it doesn't really matter what cycle you're in. Bitcoin is going to persevere long term. And you're never going to lose that ability to just directly send peer to peer. You don't have to, if there's a bank bailout, you don't have to worry about your Bitcoin being seized if you control your keys. So there's just so many philosophical, moral, ethical reasons why this is a superior form of money, of value transfer worldwide. And it's going to continue to be. We're going to see more and more examples of that post bull cycle as we go into maybe a recession. Lots of calls for a recession in the next few years here, starting in 2026. That can have catastrophic effects, especially if the money that you're tied to is a crappy money, right? We saw actually the rail in Iran, they just dropped 4 zeros off of it because it was devalued so badly overnight, right? Like they're just taking these arbitrary numbers that have been attributed to something and then shifting them as the situation gets worse. And I think that's a killer example. I just saw a post, a headline about that in the news the other day, and I thought, wow, that's amazing. We don't have that with Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And now it seems like there's like any excuse is an excuse to inflate the monetary system. Like it needs, like, again, echoing what Jeff Booth has been saying, it needs to be pumped so full of hot air just to prevent it from deflating, that the faucet has to be ever increasing. Like they have to keep throwing more and more money at the system. So everything you see from, weapons going to country X and all that's all stealth stimulus, right? Because it's, when they say we're sending Ukraine $500 billion or whatever it is, it's not like they're sending them the money. They're sending them $500 billion worth of weapons, which the government pays for to the weapons manufacturers, which means the money that they're supposed to be giving to Ukraine, it's actually staying in the U.S. economy. It's a stealth bailout. It's a way to pump the bags of the military industrial complex, and that has trickle down effects, which they're hoping reach the bottom rungs of the economy. Obviously, it's not. This is the Cantillon effect on steroids, right? It's the people closest to the government getting rich, and the further you are, the faster you get poor. And once you understand that any kind of bailout, any kind of foreign aid, that's all just money getting printed by the central government and being deposited into the bank accounts of the closest members to the money printer. That's all that is. It looks like it's like a virtue signal. It looks like you're doing something great for some disadvantaged, people, but the real benefactor is the people who print the money, and the people who are friends with the people who print the money.
Yeah, and not to go too, off the beaten track with it, but if you look back at the other world wars, were those ideological wars caused by countries that just, or were they caused by the fact that they needed to shake up the economy, right? They said war is good for the economy. That's something that you hear all the time, right? So to your point, if you look, who was supplying weapons to both sides, right? So money was being made by basically playing people against each other and funding both sides. So the people behind the scenes that were funding all of this, those were the people that were actually winning no matter the outcome of these wars, right? And so it's not much different now. We have all these little stealth wars or all these smaller scale conflicts, not full on world wars is what I mean to say. You know that that's also being done to help, like you said, wash the money, prop up the economies. They always say war is good for the economy. So when the economy is faltering, start a conflict, and we've seen that over and over, not just in modern history but in ancient history, right? A lot of these battles, if not all of them, are started for territory and for propping up the money system that's inevitably failing as it goes in cycles.
Yeah, for sure, man. There's no coincidence that the saber rattling always happens around shaky economy times where the debt's unsustainable. They need an excuse to lower rates. So they saber rattle, someone retaliates, the rates get lowered because there's some emergency measure that gets, shoehorned into Congress and of course pass with flying colors. Because if you don't, what are you, an American, or, you're a traitor. So it's like, and again, I sympathize with that because I don't see a solution from within the system. So if I ever was in the unfortunate position to be, in politics and responsible for economic policy or something like that, what a, what a depressing place to be, because, you're there to fix things, and the only tools, you need a screwdriver, but all you have are hammers. You got the big hammer, the small hammer, the jackhammer. You just need a screwdriver, but that's not one of the tools in your toolkit. So you keep hammering away at the screw and it doesn't go anywhere. But look how much work we're doing. Look how good we are. Look how much good we're doing for the economy. So again, it's all just futile. And I do really believe that a solution from outside of the system is the only one that will be like durable.
Yeah, and it's always summed up so well by Lynn Alden when she says nothing stops this train. I
Yeah.
mean, as simple and to the point as possible, but it really covers everything. You're not going to print your way out of this nightmare that's been created. The system, you can't. What is it? I think Jeff Booth says you can't build a better system from inside the current system if
Yeah.
that system is broken and flawed, which, as we've discussed here today extensively, it is. And so that's why it's so exciting to see the heat punk movement, to see the home mining movement, to see Bitcoin, to see circular economies taking shape, taking root, because that is that new emergent world that I was sort of visualizing earlier in the conversation. It's being built beneath the surface right now, and it's going to come into play when we need it most, when everything kind of looks bleak and hopeless. I'm hopeful that this world that we're building now on actual sound principles
Yeah.
will be able to emerge as the new world.
Yeah. Something you said there, like like, so yeah, when you're oh, it's probably gone again, but like the Bitcoin standard, or operating on a Bitcoin standard, has all those incentives baked in, but then bringing it back to mining, those incentives that you benefit from when you become a Bitcoiner, as in, like, lowering the RPMs on that fiat treadmill, etc. You see those act as second and third order consequences to hash rate heating too. Like, I guess it really comes down to a scarcity mindset, which is rooted in fiat, and then an abundance mindset, which is rooted in like a deflationary system, like that Jeff Booth talks about, where innovation makes the price of everything go to zero. That you can see that with things like when you hash rate heat. If one of your kids leaves the door open, and I know I've probably talked about this on a number of podcasts, but again, I think it's a powerful thing. You change from that like scarcity, like, oh, quick, close the door, you're letting the heat up, we're paying for the heat. You don't care as much. You shift from like a scarcity mindset to a mindset of abundance. And even that psychological change, I think it's like echoed in so many different aspects. So when you engage in these different things, whether it's Bitcoin in general, Lightning, hash rate heating, you start to see these consequences, and the more and longer you do them for, the more benefit you see. So that's a powerful thing that I think it's not talked about much, like the second and third order consequences of being on a standard, a Bitcoin standard, and living on with hash rate heating as your primary source of heat for the cold season.
Yeah, I agree. It's not talked about nearly enough, and that's why I'm really excited to do it with you today. But I think you're only able to do that because it is something given to you as a result of the realizations that you've had, right? Like you're afforded this opportunity to even think about these things because you're not on that treadmill as much, right? And that's rare, but it's going to be less and less rare, and that's one of the beautiful, bountiful things about being in Bitcoin is it slowly over time, if you're patient enough, it opens up that world to you where you're actually able to sit outside in a hammock or in a nice Muskoka chair and just think about the world, right? Instead of just like always go 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 go. You're going to be calmer with your kids, you're going to be calmer with your spouse because you're not rattled by all these fiat traps that basically cause you stress. We know how bad of a killer stress is in the world. I think we're going to find in the next 10, 20, 25 years that it's even more of a killer than what we attribute to it now. And I don't know a lot of stressed out Bitcoiners unless they're in treasury companies. Then, I mean, they're on meds for that. But, the average Bitcoiner like yourself that is actually actively every day working on the future, building these home heating setups with the miners, like you're creating so much space in your life to enjoy things, to think problems out, to come up with better solutions. And instead of a universal basic income that people propose, right? Like the government has proposed in Canada for sure, this UBI, universal basic income, right? Let's just take care of people and then they're left to just do whatever. And I always thought, what a horrible idea that is. You're going to have a bunch of people already uninspired, already, that just don't think for themselves. They're just going to be paid to exist, and they're not necessarily going to go and contribute to a better society. But there will be a handful of people who are now freed from this burden of like working all the time, and their skills and their gifts are going to be free to sort of flourish, right? Well, Bitcoin puts that on steroids. If you're on Bitcoin, if you're building solutions like home heating rigs in Bitcoin, you're free to now start thinking about how to solve real problems in the world. And I would wager that this is going to be an accelerant on a better world. The stuff that you're building with these home heating setups, it's going to eliminate so many problems in the future in personal lives. It's just like an accelerant. So you're saving in Bitcoin, you're building on Bitcoin, you're thinking in a Bitcoin lens. I think that's going to change and reshape society.
Yeah, and just touching back on the Bitcoin as time, um, information's coming at us so fast now. Like things are changing. Information is so we're so saturated with information that if you live a life where you're not affording yourself time to course correct, I think you can go down a path that's not sustainable very easily. You can be led down a path that's not sustainable very easily. So using that time to course correct, to retool, to educate, to broaden your understanding of your environment and your place in it, I think is extremely helpful. Just like on a spiritual level, even if you want to get that deep, like of course I've become a lot more calm since I've become or my focus has become Bitcoin, and my business has been rooted in solving a problem with Bitcoin. um and I think that's going to be apparent for other people as well, even if it's something small like $1 a day buy or something like that. It's all kind of reinforcing a better way to do things, a more sustainable way to do things. Um, yeah, it's, and I think like the network effect has to be talked about here, because like good begets good kind of thing. And if you have one positive outcome or experience with Bitcoin, it might lead you to get more involved, or to uncover a talent that you never knew you had, which I think was something I discovered. Like I had a very technical, kinesthetic, tools, technology, building computers background. So for me, this felt so comfortable right away. But for other people I know in the space, they have, coding or, it's computer science backgrounds where they can contribute in other ways. And it's just really cool to see how, it doesn't matter if you're HVAC, uh, a pool technician, because all the pumps and valves and things for immersion mining is straight out of that. That you could you have if you have like a skill in a technical field, there's some way to dovetail it into Bitcoin. I'm convinced. I mean, whether it's financial or mechanical, electrical, um, God, there's like it really, like, it's almost like it, like the Renaissance man, the classic like Renaissance man. It really appeals to people who I think are, uh, they see themselves as like Renaissance people, where they
Yeah.
they pull knowledge from like an interdisciplinary well, and they combined it in a way that, um, they combine it in a way that it's like a Gestalt, as the German call it. It's like the sum of the parts is greater than, or the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You can take knowledge from a whole bunch of different areas and create something or contribute to something or build something that's profound.
Definitely seeing that, right? A whole sorts of new opportunities to be building in Bitcoin. I think of Papusa a lot over in El Salvador, Node Nation. If you don't know Node Nation, check them out. But what he's doing to get in with schools and to get in with the youth and teach them about coding and how to set up your node and how to run a node and why that's important. And just watching the joy in these kids are having, knowing that there's future opportunity for them to learn a skill. Like you said, trades have always been so important, right? But when you can go into any sort of technical field, any sort of trade, and then slap that on top of Bitcoin, right? Superimpose that on top of Bitcoin, the synergy is unbelievable. It's so powerful. Trades are already supercharged, right? In a world where people are doing useless degrees, let's call them. When you have all these useless degrees, I want to make so many jokes, but I won't. You know, people say like this is dying, right? You're going to school, university for 4 years or more. You're getting these useless degrees. You're $100,000 in debt, and then you go out and you work at the dollar store. You work at a fast food restaurant. You know how
Yeah.
long it's going to take to pay those debts off. So there, you're already seeing sort of a reversion and going back to the trades, right? People going, I need a technical skill. If you can take that and combine it with Bitcoin, you're going to be flying. So I'm excited for all of the future kids that are going to be coders and programmers and devs, as well as the ones that are going to be working in technical setups, like with what you guys are doing in the heat punk movement.
Yeah, man. And one of the biggest joys for me in my, like, the interactions, most joyful interactions I've had with my clients have been like taking someone who is not technical, but wants to, have hash rate heating in their house, and showing them the world of, setting up a wallet, writing down a seed phrase. Obviously, I don't write down the seed phrase or seed phrase. I turn off the screen share for that part. But walking them through that setup of becoming a self-custodied lightning node running, hash rate heating, and going from zero to that is huge. And, sometimes there's questions, but all the stuff that I do allows them to take it and run with it and not need my help, because, once you learn something and you understand it, then you can take it to the next level. And actually many of my clients have done that. They've taken their setups to the next level, whether it was, they went from a very simple setup on ocean mining, which is what I recommend, all of my clients. And then they create their own datum node and they host it on a dynamic DNS so they can, access it or have other people connect to it. It's really, really cool to see, how inspiring this technology is, for so many different reasons, ones that you wouldn't expect, so far outside of number go up that you wouldn't expect it.
Yeah, I'm always struck by the feeling of helping somebody get set up with their own wallet and understand some of these like basic things, wallets, holding your own keys, the importance of self custody, um, and then things like the nodes and setting up the miners and things like that. It's super meaningful because you can almost hear this change in their voice
Yeah,
when they're all
totally.
done.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, you've experienced that too, where they're like they're a little bit more sovereign now, right? They're a little bit more responsible, a little bit more confident in themselves, in life, in their future. It's like you're handing them something really special with that. And the full magnitude isn't always understood right away, but there's like something in them that's like, so I control this money now and I can send it here instantly and I can receive it from someone on the other side of the world instantly. Like, for us in the first world, maybe that's not such a light bulb moment as it should be. But for people in Africa and Latin America and underdeveloped countries with, restrictive infrastructure in the banking system and stuff, it's like a complete life saving thing. Do you know Zia?
No, I don't think
He,
I do.
Zia is the gentleman that got arrested in Iran for
Oh yes,
teaching
you
and
sent me
sharing.
that. I saw the podcast you guys did. Yeah,
Yeah, so he is an incredible like
awesome dude.
OG Bitcoin guy, and his story is crazy. And so he was telling me about the ability to work from within Iran and receive payments in Bitcoin from countries outside. Whereas if they tried to send that as a bank transfer, like no
Yeah,
chance he's getting that money. So just something like that alone, that's something that just struck me now, right? It's just like that is a level of self sovereignty that you otherwise might not even ever have access to, depending on where you were born in the world, right? That lottery ticket, right? Where were you born? Into what system? And so, yeah, the ability to teach somebody how to do that in a matter of moments, and then hand them over the keys and say, this is the ride you're on now. Enjoy. It's an incredibly rewarding experience.
oh yeah, man. Totally. Yeah, like just to elaborate on that, the uh setting up the wallet and all that. Yeah, it's they realize that, oh, like I take it for granted because I've been mining for a while, but like I remember that feeling of plugging in the first machine and seeing your payouts coming in, and this like realization of like, oh, I'm getting KYC free sats for the first time. These are like, it's almost like investing in gold and a gold ETF versus holding on to a piece of like a 1 ounce bullion or something.
Mining it out of the ground yourself and touching it. Yeah.
It's got that feel to it. Like it's like a layer removed. You're closer to the asset. Because a big component of that asset was privacy focused. And any Bitcoin that's not acquired through KYC free means, whether it's peer to peer or mined, that like it like waters it down. And I think I said this last time. I really do think once all the capital flight measures are implemented by all these third world or these first world countries, they already have them in the third world. I think that's when you're going to see a premium rise in the KYC free sats because, I mean, I really hope this doesn't happen. And what Luke and Mechanic and everyone, Jason, everyone doing at Ocean with Datum and Knots, what they're doing is great to prevent mining pool centralization because that is one of the attack vectors for what we're talking about. If one day all the mining is centralized enough and co-opted by or strong armed by a government where only KYC sats can be exchanged and all the addresses that are associated with non KYC Bitcoin, or I mean that probably can't happen, but something to that effect could happen if mining is centralized. So um, it is an attack vector that's being I think handled extremely well by Luke and his team there at Ocean, but it is a real threat. And having KYC free sats basically allows you to not have to care about the policies of a centralized miner, because if you're doing them peer to peer, yeah, they obviously have to be mined into existence. But if you're mining yourself, if you're able to use datum to kind of reflect how the kind of transactions you want in your mempool, I think that's powerful. And the fact that they're paying more again aligns the incentives in a way where I think they're just going to take more and more hash rate. And again, if mining is centralized with Ocean, it doesn't mean anything compared to if it's mining centralized with F2 pool, because everyone who's running datum could be optimized for a completely different type of transaction, right? Let's say you love ordinals or JPEGs or whatever.
Well, let's not say that. Nobody, yeah.
I wouldn't put that on you.
Don't put that on me.
That's a bad hypothetical. But let's say someone like that, they could change their knots node to reflect that line for those transactions, right? So even if payout distributions are centralized by Ocean, the template construction isn't. And I think that I know we weren't going to get too technical, but I think that's a very important philosophical thing that's happening right now in the mining world. And I think it's a very technical thing in nature, but I think the implications really come from a better philosophical alignment with what Satoshi had originally planned for the network.
Yeah, two things there. And you thankfully just reminded me with the last thing you said of what the second one I had was, which is I don't think Satoshi or the original vision of Bitcoin was bend over for the government, align with the fiat system, because there's this whole, like, some people say, well, Bitcoin doesn't have to be um, a killer to the system. It can work in parallel, in tandem with it, which I think is where you get these treasury companies and this fiat lending stuff. Like, I think that's where you sort of get into the weeds with that, right? I think it was meant to be peer-to-peer digital currency. It was meant to be used in defiance of a broken system, not working right alongside it, right? So that's why your non KYC free sats are worth their weight in Bitcoin, worth their weight in gold, whatever. Like, they're extremely important. And second is, I think the more I play it through and the more I think it through, and I hear people like you talk about it, I think one of the most existential threats that we will face, not if, but when, is some sort of attempt to control the network or control or strong arm mining pools and big miners. I think that is probably one of the biggest existential threats to Bitcoin, is that eventually you just know if this thing gets too strong, and it really is in defiance of the system, not something that, the CIA created or whatever. If this really is what we all think it is, then at some point they're going to be threatened by it and they're going to come for it. And the best way that they can probably try to come for it is not allowing, like you said, trying to disallow the off-ramping of non KYC coins into fiat. So say we don't get that Bitcoin standard where everyone's, transacting, or a lot of people in the world are transacting in Bitcoin. They're going to maybe try to regulate that, right? So that you can't offload or off ramp into fiat. And then the other one that sounds obvious is just trying to co-opt or strong arm some of these mining pools, whether it's through regulation or it's through, funding or just straight up, government means of kind of strong arming. So tell me what you see or think and feel about that. Do you think that that's a real existential threat that we are facing? Maybe not now, but in 10, 15, 20 years?
No, I see it now. I thought that 10, 15, 20 years type of thing originally. And then I forget who it was, but they posted all the mining pools block templates, and like the top, like not 1, 2, 3, but like number 1, 3, 4, and 7 pools all are submitting the same block templates, supposedly or allegedly from Bitmain. So that represents a more than 50% concentration of block template submissions onto the network, which exposes a 51% attack. Again, they're not going to, well, I say they're not going to do it. The incentives are to not do it because it'd be like shooting yourself in the foot. If that's your source of income, why would you poison the well which you drink from? But the opportunity to poison that well exists. And therefore, if you have a money printer with infinite ability to print money and a pool or a company that controls the majority of block template construction submissions to the network, well, now you have a problem. And I think what Ocean is doing to fix it is great, but I think we need more people, to understand the problem, because they look at the miningpoolstats.com or whatever that site is, and they go, oh yeah, I got 30% here, 40, 25%, 20, 19. It's decentralized. No one has 50, but under the hood, it's kind of theater. It's there is a disturbing high concentration of templates coming from the same source. So I don't think it is a 10-year problem. I think it's a now problem, and it's not the implications aren't being realized because the incentives are to not shoot yourself in the foot.
Well, it's not that the mining
pointed at the foot.
Yeah, it's cocked and loaded and they're aiming it. Yeah, no, but to your point, it's not necessarily that the mining pools would be incentivized to do that. They could be co-opted. They could be strong armed into this, meaning
single point of failure.
They are the single counterparty risk here, and the government could easily come in and say, you need to shut down, and maybe they move. You need to censor so and such transactions in your templates. Like, these are real risks, and they can't do that to the home miners, which is another, like, yeah, okay, 1,000 more Bitaxes, 10,000 more Bitaxes. That's not going to completely decentralize the risk from, these like 50% plus attacks, right? 51% attack that's distributed amongst these pools that you're talking about. But under the hood, they're pretty much all the same, controlled by the same, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't mean if you get 10K Bitaxes out there in the hands of the plebs that you're going to make a significant impact. But that's the start of what needs to happen. And we need more oceans out there, right? We need more oceans as options. And that can start to pry away some of this, because they're never going to be able to censor the home miners in the way that they could censor like a Bitmain or an ant miner, or ant pool rather.
Yeah, I just think that, like, if you can write your own block templates, that is the solution to the centralization issue. Now, communicating the benefits of writing your own templates, I think needs to be realized, but it is like, we've seen the hash rate on Ocean go from like 5 exahash to 15 to, I think we're like 19 today. Something crazy. It's gone from like the 40th first 50th biggest pool to like the 12th. It's surpassed Brains recently, which is crazy feat. So yeah, I think, again, the incentives are aligned so well that it's happening. It's happening. It seems slow if you're right up close to it. If you take a step back, the thing's a hockey stick. It's the adoption curve is going parabolic with Datum, with knots, with mining on Ocean. It's all going in the right direction, I think, just with regards to prioritizing the health of the network overall, and going to like the next 10 years, how you and I kind of talked about how immutability and censorship resistance are going to be more of a feature than, hard money number go up. That is going to increase the on-chain activity, which is going to boost fees for miners. So we don't have to, pander to JPEG creators or whatever, however they're stuffing stuff in the blockchain right now. Non-monetary use cases, which I despise. So I think that's where that demand will come from, and mining will continue to be healthy. And, we've got over 100 years left, I think, of mining if things go the way I think they will. And then again, even after that, right, the price of Bitcoin might be so high that just transactions, just mining blocks into existence based on transaction fees, I think will also be, that will be feasible or like economically rational to do so at that point when it's
Yeah. And I also wanted to say in that last bit, but I left it out by accident, was that while the Bitax might not, like a couple thousand of those might not make a dent, which is the criticism we hear a lot, that combined with, if everyone's running one of those, a Nerdax, a Bitax, and they're heating their home, or they're heating their pool, or they're heating their workshop, or they're heating their company warehouse or whatever, that hash rate heating plus the home mining, that's going to make an impact over time, at least in the ability to transact with less censorship in time, right? If enough people are actually running their own node and submitting their own templates and mining from home, and they're doing so and they're getting heat because of it, it's just a win-win, right? So I think that's going to be another one of those killer use cases long into the future.
Yeah. I think the Bitax, the value of the Bitax is an educational tool. You can, just with that one little device, you can learn so much that if and when you are ready to move to a larger setup, you can take all that stuff that you learn and it just scales 1-to-1. Like if it works on a Bitax, it'll work on an S19, it'll work on an S23, it'll work on a proto rig. It's that low cost barrier, getting your foot in the door, exposing yourself to the environment, understanding it. And then again, if everything is green lights with the Bitax, can you imagine how great it would be with an S19? Can you imagine how great it would be with an S23? Can you imagine? So it's, I think it's like a great non-committal way to enter into the ecosystem and acquire all things, all the education, all the knowledge of how to get paid out and Lightning and wallets and all that you can do with the Bitax, which, that's like an order of magnitude more valuable than the price tag on the hardware. So I think that's where the value is there.
Yeah, I had zero interest in HVAC and, home heating and things like that before BitAxe. And so, yeah, you're not heating your home with the BitAxe, but like you just said, it's that thing that opens the door, right? Once I started running mining devices, right, then I started to value every sat differently, right? If you're mining to your own node and you're building your own block templates and you're getting these lightning payouts, right? Like that in and of itself is a huge learning process, but
Yep.
it's a very empowering one. Like once I got that stuff set up, I felt like amazing. Just like we talked about earlier, maybe setting someone up in their 50s or 60s with their own wallet and their own keys, their money, they don't have to ask permission, all this great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they're heating their home and they're getting paid to do it, right? So that's very impactful. And so for me, running miners at home was impactful, right? Even if the payouts are small. And then from there, it was like, oh, you can get paid to heat your home, right? So I actually fell in love with the heat punk side of things because I understood it to be the next kind of evolutionary step in mining from home. And that started with, the BitAxe and the NerdAxe and things like that. And it evolves into that next logical step, which is heating at home.
Yeah, man. It all ties in such a crazy way. It's almost like whoever invented Bitcoin, they can either see the future or they're from the future, or like it just, the more I look into it, the more like in awe of how amazing the incentives are and how brilliant the people who worked on it and are currently working on it are. So yeah, just so much appreciation for it. And the rabbit hole just gets deeper with every experiment, every device, every time I test the firmware, or you learn something new. And it's so cool to
it just leads, like one thing leads into the next so perfectly, which is why, yeah, it feels like Satoshi was an alien or from the
Yeah.
future for sure. Because like you go to where we just talked about, right? BitAxe, okay, self-custody, okay, heating from home. And then you go to your node, you start running a node and you're like, oh, decentralized private storage of my information, right? My funds, right? Privacy, security. These are all things. It's like one thing just perfectly sets you up for that next step in the journey. And before you know it, you're like, I don't want the bank to hold my money. I want to, I want to run my own Lightning node. I want to facilitate transactions. I want privacy. I want security. I want sovereignty. I want, all of those things, which you cannot get in the traditional system, right? Where they're monitoring your savings account. When you go to, I remember trying to withdraw cash one time, and they said, "Well, what do you want the cash for?" It was only a couple thousand, like maybe let's say $3,000, and they want you to explain. And I've heard more and more of this from people on the timeline. This was years and years ago, but in the last few years, it's really accelerated. People getting debanked, them asking you, well, what do you intend to spend this on? As if it's any of their business, right? So you go to work, you blood, sweat, and tears, you earn it, you give it to them to custody, which is your first mistake. But then when you go to try to use it, they want to know, what is the source of your funds? How are you intending on spending this? It's crazy, right? So that is an antiquated system, and it's predatory system. And so I love that we have another option now in the world.
Well, think about this. It's so much worse than that. Actually, it's like, so I think in Canada, FinTrack, likes to, or they have to ask what the use of the funds are if it's $2,000 or more. So $2,000 or more. And it's been the same value for like 50 years or something. Now think about inflation. That $2,000 is going to get you less and less and less and less until now every single purchase you make in the future will be scrutinized, because that $2,000 is probably like a weekly grocery, or who knows,
exactly.
right? That could be such a low economic value but it's not like the number changes with inflation, right? So there's that. It's essentially like a zip tie. It only gets tighter. It doesn't get looser around your neck. And the other one is Australia, Canada, and UK, particularly, I guess the Commonwealth countries. Like you just mentioned, people are getting debanked left and right. And this is just like within the Bitcoin circle, we're hearing so much chatter about people being debanked, locked out of my account, no explanation, no reason, no cause. So again, this supports that thesis. The next 10 years will be the capital flight 10 years, where on-chain Bitcoin transacting anonymously, being able to permeate borders, nation state borders with your net worth intact, I think that's going to be where the premium comes from. So who knows? Maybe we don't see a giant dip after this 4-year cycle, and it could be not just because of that. It could also be because when Bitcoin was going through massive or like high rates of adoption, when it did that crazy move in like 2017, 2018, and went from 1,000 to 20,000 like quickly. Um, I think, I think in that circumstance, the halving dynamics affect the price significantly. But I think once you have a large user base and the halving, as you know, it's like an asymptote. It will, as you have, it's like, it goes from 6 to 3 to 1 point. It becomes less impactful. And then also, as the money printing picks up, as you know, like nothing stops this train, as that keeps on going in that same direction, although exponentially, I think the booms and busts caused by the halving cycle become less pronounced. And again, I'm no economist and I'm just guessing, but even if you look at the amplitude between the first cycle, second cycle, third cycle, and this cycle, it's like there's like mass adoption does this with every asset, but we're seeing it in Bitcoin too, where it becomes harder to turn a massive tanker than it does to turn a Sea-Doo, and then also the institutional adoption kind of puts a floor under it with regards to the crashes, right? Like you're gonna have people accessing the network or accessing Bitcoin or the ability to buy it who didn't have access in the past, and you're talking about large pools of liquidity. So I don't know if it's going to be another 80% or 70%, or I think it was a 68% drawdown last time or something. I don't know, but I don't, I'm leaning towards no, just because of those reasons I stated.
Yeah, impossible to predict that, but it is diminishing returns, right? You can just look at that, or diminishing losses, like retraces as well. So just being aware, anything can happen, and staying in your comfort zone in terms of, if you're selling, if you're holding, right? That's something everyone needs to decide if they can weather those drawdowns or not, right? But I tend to agree with you that I don't think it's going to be as brutal, as violent of a retrace.
Yeah.
But really, even if it is, it does not change the underlying foundation or principles. It always comes back up higher over time, right? So for me, those are just great opportunities to own more.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it sounds like that other stuff that you were talking about really sets the stage for the CBDCs to roll out, which we know a lot of these countries want to do, right? So it's a control structure, and so you just got to realize that is probably part of this bigger agenda. Um, and if you don't want to live in a world like that, invest in your time and your skills into Bitcoin, home mining, home hash rate heating, right? Things like that. Those skill sets are going to be incredibly valuable, not only for you on a personal level, but for your community, your family, the people around you, the people that you love and care about. If you just value your skills that you do have, and please go out and learn more. Use this podcast and the people like Toine that we have on it to go out and enhance your skill set to be able to provide more value to your own life and to the world around you, because I really think that we're going to look back and go, yeah, the things that we learn now were extremely critical 10 years down the line.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you're dead on there.
Is there anything else that we missed that you want to cover before we wrap up?
I think we pretty much rounded it off. Yeah, I was going to get more philosophical, but you know what? I think what we did was, it was right on that line of, if it was practical, there was useful information in there. I definitely wanted to like inform your viewers of like where I came from and why I'm doing this, just, to understand on a deeper level. And even for myself, just to like talking about it kind of helps me. When you say something out loud, it kind of makes it real, and it helps me understand my place. And yeah, no, I appreciate all the really good questions. You always drop good ones on me that make me think. So yeah, thanks again for the chat.
Always my pleasure, man. Why don't we do this? Why don't we wrap it up with just tie it all together for everybody, the intersection, the sort of weave it together philosophically and technically, practically. How is this Bitcoin and the Bitcoin home heating hash rate home heat punk movement? How is this going to change the world, and why is it so important? Right. Let's get to the thing that you said right at the start of it. The so what? What is the so what of all of this that we talked about today?
I think the big so what, it comes back to that Jeff Booth metaphor where you're basically on two surfboards if you're a Bitcoiner, and the more weight you put on the Bitcoin surfboard, the more benefits kind of make themselves available to you. And hash rate heating is a great way to take some weight off the fiat surfboard, place it on the Bitcoin surfboard. It opens up a whole bunch of educational doors, financial doors. It opens up technical and even like, getting more involved in Bitcoin itself and understanding it and using it as money and uh, inspiring communities, neighbors to create circular economies. And I really just see so much synergy and like net benefit to engaging in these activities, because there are so many network effects and second and third order consequences that are beneficial in doing so. So there's nothing more cypherpunk than hash rate heating. It is, if you really want to get involved, I think that is a great way to, and you have like, technical curiosity. I think that's a great way to do it. Build your own, run a BitX, understand the network, grab an S19, buy a heating system. These are all ways to take some of that weight off the fiat system, put it on the Bitcoin system, and then, do it for a little while and you'll start to see the benefits. And it's really cool to see people come back and upgrade, install more units. Some people see the benefit right away. Some after a whole heating season, they look at the bill, they look at how much Bitcoin they are and they go, okay, I need another one this year. So, I think that's, I'll leave it there. It's check it out, try it, get involved, even if it's on a small level with the BitX, or, just dip a toe if you're curious, because I think there's a lot of opportunity in doing so.
Well, I hope everybody really loves this episode, because I know we've had Toine on 2 or 3 times now, and he's gotten deep into the weeds with the technical stuff, which you guys have eaten up. You've loved it, but I really value Toine as a person and as a thinker, not just a builder. And so really good opportunity here to just dive into the philosophical side of things a bit more, the why, the so what, the bigger picture, which I personally love. So I hope you guys got a lot of value out of it, in addition to all the technical stuff that we've had with Toine in previous episodes. Toine's company is 256 Heat. Check him out. Tell him 2Sats and the Home Mining Podcast sent you. If you are looking to get into hash rate heating, which I've had a number of people DM me about on Twitter, that they've heard your episodes and they are now buying S19s and they're getting busy tinkering. So I'm sure that's satisfying for you to hear. So yeah, you're doing great work, and hopefully everybody enjoyed your message. And I'm sure we'll have you on again, man. Love you like a brother, and appreciate you sharing this with our audience.
Thank you, man. It's awesome talking with you, like always.
That's everything for this episode of the Home Mining Podcast. Make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Share this with a friend or a family member who needs Bitcoin mining or hash punk, heat punk in their life. And we'll see you in the next one.